Tonight on Studio One, our hypnotherapist Russell Hemmings rescued a boy with an extreme fear of flying.
We'll talk to Joe to find out how Russell changed his life. A British boy living in Abu Dhabi needed some very special help to get back to Britain this month after being unable to leave the country due to his extreme fear of flying.
The phobia had meant that 12-year-old Joe Thompson had not been back to the UK to see friends and family for over 2 years. In a few minutes we'll be catching up with Joe, see how he's getting on, safely at home in the UK now. But first let's hear the story from Dad Tony and the man who made it all possible, returning to our sofas here on Studio One, a hypnotherapist, Russell Hemmings. Thank you, gentlemen, for both being with us.
Good evening. Good evening.
Tony, it's a fascinating story. It's one that's gone, to use the word lightly, viral in the UK at the moment. A huge amount of international press interest in your family's story. So paint a picture for us, because look, there are a few people who are watching at the moment who have a fear of flying. You know, it is fairly regular for a few people to grip hold of whoever's next to them while they're on a flight. Why was Joe so different, and when did you become aware of the fact that it was more than just a fear?
Well, Joe had been flying for many years, since he was a young baby. He'd been to Canada, he'd been backwards and forwards to Europe, and he'd been in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi, since 2008, and he'd been flying every school break, backwards and forwards, without any sign of a problem. The first indication we had was in the beginning of 2012, when he went home to the UK for half term. And when he went to come back from Heathrow to come back over here, Pauline, his mother, rang me and said he won't get on the plane. He won't even get through check-in. And that was the first time that we found out that he had this problem. But
there's a fear that had developed.
It has developed.
Time here.
Where it came from, we don't know. Although we think there may have been some connection with a problem when he landed, when he had a bit of a cold, a bit of an ear infection, and he was experiencing quite a bit of pain. And we think that was a contributing factor. I'm sure Russell will add to that. But it was it came literally out of the blue. We had no idea. I didn't think that 18 months or more he'd be stranded over here, unable to get home. And until I met Russell, I thought there was no end to it, because I'd tried so many things.
Now, as Tom mentioned earlier, I mean, the fear of flying is fairly common, I would say. Like, I had it when I was really young, but in Joe's case, it was obviously a bit of an extreme situation, because he had panic attacks and he completely refused to travel. So how did you deal with this, Russell?
Well, I run a Freedom from Fear program anyway, and when I was introduced to you, you gave me a call. After I'd read about Joe in the press and thought it had just been dealt with, and then you got on the phone and spoke to me. I put him through the program, but there was a number of issues. There was the relationship with his ear infection. He also had claustrophobia, so he didn't want the aeroplane doors to shut. He didn't like enclosed spaces, and it was we were getting transferal into other vehicles, so he was starting to get panic attacks on planes, trains, and boats.
Yeah, but hang on. When you say panic attack, a lot of people were going, okay, yeah, so he got a bit stressed, etc.
Yeah.
Is that it, or was it going further than that?
No, I mean, if you saw some of the footage, it's horrific. When you experience anxiety, there's 14 different symptoms. Possibly you can have between 4 and 14 of these symptoms, and they're horrific. I've experienced them myself years ago, and anyone that's watching that's experienced panic attacks, they know what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's very, very frightening. It's almost like you feel you're going to have a heart attack, die. It's the closest thing to the most dangerous thing you could ever imagine.
So quite stressful for the family as well.
Yeah, to watch, to see their own child, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people have said and thought, well, I'd get my son on the plane, I'd just give him a slap and shake him, get him on. Yeah. Well, this was pretty extreme. I mean, I was in the police for about 20, 30 years, and this was an extreme case of fear. And the airline crew, before we actually said, look, this boy isn't able to go on. He would be hyperventilating, have difficulty breathing. He would be wasn't making a lot of noise, but he was in great distress, huge distress, and there was no way he would be allowed on the plane anyway.
They refused him to go
They
on
refused.
the
They said
plane.
he can't go on in that state, and it was extreme.
And there have been 4 failed attempts because I mean the tickets are booked, bags are packed,
Yep.
check-in. I
Yep.
think at the 4th attempt he almost sat in the plane, and then there was a big scene. He tried to escape. Tell us about that.
Well, it was actually from Dubai. I was taking a rugby team of mainly young players and a few parents from Dubai to Colombo to play in a tour match, and Joe was really looking forward to it. But we came to Dubai, he was with his friends, actually got him on the plane. He was the last one on before me, and then and he was sitting right at the back in Dubai in March last year. And the cabin crew made the announcement, closing the doors in 2 minutes, and he was sitting on in the aisle seat, and he literally, as soon as she said we're closing the doors, he clambered over the person next to him,
Wow.
climbed up and ran down the plane with me in hot pursuit, and he went out the door because it was the two staircases, one at the front and one at the rear, and he was out. He was out then, and as soon as he got out the door onto the tarmac, he calmed down. So I said to him, Joe, look, you're coming. Our bags are on the plane. Anyway, he couldn't. He was just couldn't handle it. So I had to make that split decision: do I go or do I stay? I rang his mother, and she came and collected him, passed him over to the police, and he was fine. But yeah, there was no way he was going to stay on that plane, which was my concern when I was with Russell, because that was the first time he'd seen him in an airport situation. Was this going to
We're
happen
going to ask you
again?
to stick around because we're going to take a short break now. You're okay to stick around, aren't you?
Yeah,
We're
sure.
going to feed you after as well, Russ. That's
Excellent.
okay, yeah?
Excellent.
So we've got plenty to look forward to. We're also going to talk
forward
to Joe as well, hopefully, over in the United Kingdom to see how he's getting on back in the UK and after the treatment. And also find out a little more about how this treatment and how the condition has manifested itself. So stick with us. Stick with us. We'll take a short break. When we come back, as I said, we're off to the UK to speak to Joe.
Right after this.
Welcome back to Studio One. Tony and Russell still with us in the studio. We're talking to Joe very shortly as well. Just want to get a little more from you here, Russell, with regards to the actual condition that Joe was suffering from here,
Yeah.
because you had to work through a couple of the situations in order to sort of work out what the trigger was in many
Yep.
ways. Because a
Yep.
lot of people would think it would be fear of crashing, but it wasn't that, was it?
Yeah, I mean, Joe came to me, it was a fear of flying. After 2 or 3 meetings with him, I'd realised it wasn't actually a fear of flying, it was a fear of being not in control, locked into a place where he couldn't get out. He kept referring, I don't want the door to close. So it was claustrophobia, really. That was the condition. But he was getting GADS, generalised anxiety disorder. So these feelings that we talked about earlier, they were manifesting themselves in other areas of his life. And the only place he was beginning to feel safe was in his bedroom
So
at
how
home.
difficult was it for you to get him physically on the plane?
Well, it wasn't difficult because I have a process that works. It was just a case of dealing with it if he had a panic attack. I was obligated from the moment I met Joe, and I said to the family, "We'll get him home. Even if I have to get on the plane myself, I'll take him home. That's not a problem. I just want to make sure that he learns when he's on the plane to relax, so he can go on other flights without me. Because normally in my program, I don't attend. They go on to fly on their own anyway. But there was a human interest in Joe. I got to know Joe over a 6-week period, and he said, "Would you come with me?" I said, "Of course I would. I'll come home and I'll be there with you."
So when he finally got on the airplane, I'm sure that you were tensed. He might get panic attacks. But when he came out of that trance, how did he react? What's the first thing he said?
Well, I've never seen anybody put under hypnosis before, and I was pretty amazed because we had a very stressed boy. I went on the plane, and Russell got him on, which was a result in itself. And then he was working, and I just sat back and watched, and he just went into this trance state and calmed down. And when the plane had then taken off, it must have been 15-20 minutes later, and he just opened his eyes and looked across and smiled. And it was it's very difficult to describe the emotion, but it was absolutely awesome.
Got a little surprise for you, Tony, because you haven't spoken to Joe for over a week. He joins us live on the line now from the UK. Joe, thanks very much indeed for taking time to speak to us and your dad as well here. Just tell us a little bit about that emotion. We've been talking a lot about the emotion when you landed back in the UK. Was it a sense of relief for you?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Just wondering what the emotions were, Joe, when you touched down in the UK. Was it a sense of relief for you?
Oh yeah, it was relief. Also, kind of, I felt sad because of, like, I've been there for 5 years. So I really do like the UAE, but I like it better here.
Okay, are you scared of flying? Would you be okay to get on an airplane again?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah? And we heard that you turned 13 just a couple of days ago, last week, was it?
Sorry?
You celebrated your 13th birthday just last week?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and when are you coming back down to Dubai to meet your father?
And Russell.
And Russell?
I'm not sure because we're gonna take a family trip in December. So I'm not really sure, but I will be coming back there.
Well, you'll definitely be coming back, that's for sure. And Joe, the other thing that we heard about was your relief when you got back to see your dog when you got back to the UK. Now reunited with the dog. Happy to be close with the dog again?
Yeah, I absolutely love him. I just couldn't even remember before how big he got. It's amazing. I can't stop smiling when I see him.
So are you back to your normal life, school, fun, friends, games, and all of that fun stuff?
Yeah, I'm back in school now. Right now I'm on half term, but I'm really liking school. I've got a lot of friends now, and I'm really liking it.
We've got your dad here, Tony. We've also got a man you know well, Russell Hemmings. Have you got any message that you would like to give to either of the gentlemen here?
First of all, I want to say thank you to Russell again. I haven't spoken to you in a while, and I hope you're getting along out there without me.
Really good to hear your voice, and I'm really proud of you. There's a lot of people that would not have done what you did. Never forget that. There's a lot of grown-up men that would not have got on that plane that day, and we're very proud of you.
Thank you.
No, it's a pleasure, mate.
Oh. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the phone line, Joe, and we wish you all the very best, and hopefully you can send us pictures the next time you get on an airplane.
Dad, do you want to say goodbye as well? Saves you a phone call, doesn't it, I suppose?
Yes, yeah. I hope you're enjoying the school and your second week, Joe. I think it's half term over there now. Looking forward to seeing you again before too long. Take care.
Good stuff, bless you.
Take care, Joe.
Well, it's great to know that everything is sunshine and rainbow right now. I mean, how is it? How's the family reacting to this right now? Because I'm sure that you were put through a lot of stress, considering the fact that his studies were put on hold, and even job-wise, it was a bit difficult for you and the missus. What's it like now?
I mean, it's a huge relief. It's very difficult to describe your feelings, your emotion. It was a bit emotional at the reunion at the London Heathrow Airport, but it's great. At the time, there was no end in sight until Russell came along. I tried all sorts of things, including going by road through difficult parts of the Middle East. I tried medicine, I tried doctors, I tried various things. So I was almost giving up hope, but I sort of, I had to not give up hope, and so Russell came along and made it work. Worked his magic.
Having a look at Russell's website at the moment, and just the amount of press that this particular story garnered back in the UK, here in the UAE as well. Did that take you by surprise as well, or do you think it just was a very unique story?
I think that there was a lot of people gunning for Joe. I think I read about him over a year ago, and there was no closure. So a lot of people had heard about his plight, not being able to get home, and I think they were really hoping that there was going to be closure on this. I, to be fair, read about it and thought it was being dealt with, so I was quite surprised to hear from you that it hadn't. But once they, we're quite loyal to each other, the Brits, and getting him home was important. So I think to get that closure, and it went, like you said, went globally. It wasn't a shock, no, because there was a lot of interest 18 months ago when it started.
Does it work for everything? Will it cure my fear of work or not?
There's a main difference. Fears and phobias are not the same.
No.
Oh, so it's definitely not the same. But would you say that this technique that you programmed for Joe will work if you have to work towards any other kind
It
of...
works with all phobias. We've been working on this for 5 years, and there's a little part of the brain called the amygdala which stores information through the olfactory, through smell, through sight, through hearing. So when you take on a trauma in an event, our brain records that information, puts it into that part of the brain, and then if we feel or experience that again, it then talks to another part of the brain called the hypothalamus and sends out this response we call the fight or flight response. What we have is a technique, well, there's 3 things we do: hypnotherapy, cognitive behavioural therapy and coaching. But the main technique is to take the picture of the event, tear it up and replace that with a calm event. In Joe's case, it was the bike shop, ironically, wasn't it? So he loved bikes, so he remembered the smell and what he could see. And so we took that, replaced that image of calmness and stole those emotions and feelings and put them into the flying experience.
And it has worked a treat, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Joe, we'll come and see Tony again very soon. Hopefully we'll get him on to the show.
Pleasure.
Tony, thank you to you and all your family, Joe included, of course, and Russell, bless you. Thanks for coming back. We'll see you soon. To get in touch with either of the guys, get onto our Facebook page now. You can find links to respective websites, facebook.com/Studio One Live.